Uh, been there for 18 years with Harris County. Also with him is Parisa Safarzadeh, and I said it right. So they're going to come up and speak to us on the topic, multiple agencies, one event, one voice, how to tell the correct story. So please help me welcome our speakers for this morning.
Good morning. I see there's some hangovers today. Y'all are quiet. All right. We're going to have fun this morning. Okay, so good morning, everybody. My name is Parisa Safarzadeh. Can you hear me? Should I? Oh, hello. My name is Parisa Safarzadeh. I am the digital media manager for the Harris County Sheriff's Office. I work for Sheriff Adrian Garcia. I am a civilian. I've been at the office for 2 years this July. It's really lovely, honestly, as a civilian coming in with a slight marketing background, that I get to come to these conferences and see police coming together and, kind of hashtag getting it. That it's so important to use social media and digital media. I fight these fights pretty much every day. So it's kind of like this is my safe place. I handle all of our social media outreach, whether that's for crises, weather alerts, traffic alerts, missing persons, runaways, you name it, we do it. I'm really right now the only person that does it. We right now at our agency are kind of considering whether to put out, extra Twitter handles. I'd love your feedback maybe afterwards. We have almost 5,000 employees at our agency. So when you think about, kind of passing on the baton, you kind of there's a lot of let me just say this politically correct. There's a lot of red tape in Harris County. So we want to be really careful about what we put out and how we put it out. Also, we have a colleague here, Nahida. Say hi, Nahida. Hi, Nahida. She's the digital content specialist. So I was here for about 6 months. I got an okay to hire one more person to kind of help on this digital forefront. So she handles all of our internal, external marketing materials. We do e-newsletters to our community and to our employees. Also, weekly, because the sheriff can't see everybody that we work with, weekly we do a intranet video message that we post every Monday or Friday. It's a direct message to the employees, and it's been a really good success. So that's just a little bit about me. Gil, you're on.
I'm Deputy Gilliland, Harris County Sheriff's Office. Ooh, that's loud. Is that okay? Been with the department 18 years, variety of areas, from patrol investigations and then into the Executive Bureau 7 years ago, which was quite a different step for most of you that have done that. It's a little different. I've gone through 2 sheriffs now. The first sheriff that we were under, okay.
Well, if your heads didn't hurt already.
Keep going, you'll dial me in? All right. The last sheriff that was in the administration, their area of press releases and media relations was completely different than the one we have now, which in a city of 4 million people, you can't run a division or an organization like that, and ended up costing him the election. The sheriff we have now is a younger, more vibrant, more media savvy, and has brought the organization into a more of the 21st century of media. My role as PIO and media liaison is we have 10 dedicated television outlets in the city, including newspaper, 3 radio stations. So whenever we have scenes or anything that's a critical incident, I go out, I tell everybody what's happened, give them a synopsis of do interviews, and then also in the Public Information Office, I work through the dissemination of Texas Public Information Acts. I know that here in Arizona and your other states, you might have that. In Texas, we're inundated with Freedom of Information Acts. Our Attorney General is very prolific on helping us out. We tend to send a lot of stuff up to them. And it's a game of cat and mouse with the media, of what we can release and what we can't release. We all know that there's a story to tell. We want to tell that story before the news media does. And it's usually factual if we tell it first. And that's our main goal in our whole office between Parisa and myself and our other colleagues that are there. And it kind of relates to the topic that we talk about today, which is the one voice. In a critical incident where you have multiple partners, multiple players, you might have egos that come in, you have agencies that come in, you have heads of agencies that will, and I'll tell you later about that we went through, but again, it's pushing in thing to one, disseminating the information that has a one voice and one through, that way media has the factual and not anything that's made up. As you know that they, I don't know half the times when I go to scenes, all I hear is neighbors told me or friends have told me. So half the time I tell them, well, if you can run with that, then you run with that. I can confirm what I have, but you know how that goes through you. But
So just to give you kind of an insight into Harris County, for those of you that don't know, Harris County Sheriff's Office is the largest in the country, largest in the state of Texas. We have about 4.3 million people countywide, so border to border. But as far as the area that HCSO kind of is truthfully watching, it's not a small number. It's 1.9 million people in our area. So we're very busy. It's definitely a 24-hour police watch and news cycle. We have 68 law enforcement agencies within Harris County. So imagine when you arrive on a scene or you need, a record pulled or your suspect was caught in this area and now it's in our jail. There's a lot of moving parts to work with, and Deputy Gilliland can tell you better than me, that's probably one of the biggest challenges. Sometimes it's a double-edged sword, but we're very fortunate. I'd say majority of our partnering agencies are excellent to work with. We don't have any issues. Harris County is about 1,700 square miles, and there's about 2,400 people per square mile. So if you can imagine just how vast our county is and how many people we are actually responsible for. And I got to tell you, it's continuing to grow. Houston is home to oil and gas, energy, NASA, also Ship Channel. We have a lot of, go Texans, a lot of things going on. So, there's a lot to cover. We speak close to 100 different languages in Harris County. When I say we, not me, but there's a lot of different people in our community, so that presents another problem. We have a lot of different cultures and languages spoken, so we have to meet the needs of a vast amount of different people and backgrounds. So part of our public outreach that we've recently got okayed is, not just putting things out in English, Spanish, but, Vietnamese, Chinese, Arabic, Farsi, Turkish, German, French. I mean, you name it, we got it. And so we answer to not only the constituents of Harris County, but the Commissioner's Court and the judge. I don't know who else answers to these folks, but sometimes that's challenging as well. And they kind of are the make or break for budget, salaries, new jobs, et cetera. So that's just kind of a little.
approvals of.
Yeah, I mean,
any type of media-related type things. If not using money through the sheriff's office, then we have to use grant money, and everything has to be approved. So we're kind of, Parisa and I were talking earlier, we're kind of jealous of you agencies that put out the more fun type videos and the shake it type stuff. And unfortunately, we're not able to do things like that in our area. Our Facebook is a little more professional, I guess. I don't want to use that word, but we don't get to do that type of stuff. And it's because of the area that we live in, the city, and just politically wise, it wouldn't be very correct to us to do a lot of things like that.
And I'll show you in a second our attempt at being fun, and I got my hand slapped on that too. So I knew then, like, okay, retreat, humor is not the best way to go here. But we try, and we every now and then we push the envelope. So I'm glad you guys, I was just telling somebody, I was like, I live vicariously through other police agency Facebook pages. So keep on doing it, because when I'm having to write some drab, PC statement with a nice, polished photo, I'm kind of on the side looking at y'all's Facebook, laughing my ass off. So it's really funny. So keep up the good work. So let's see. So the breakdown I'll let Gil, because he's been there much longer than I have. But this is sort of the organs of the Media Relations Office.
Before Sheriff Garcia came into to office, under the old administration, we had approximately 2 people that were in our media office. We had a lieutenant and myself. And we didn't have Facebook, we didn't have Twitter. The only thing that we would use was press releases that we would generate from scenes and either coordinating with through federal partners and through the Houston area. We have ATF, FBI, Department of Justice, all through. Houston's a major hub. The one thing that we did start when the new sheriff came in is that to put us into the 21st century of media. We then expanded, started building slow, but then now we're arrived and we're pretty good right now. My duties as PIO, I told you earlier, as Public Information Office, I deal with a variety of things from the law side. I have to wear many hats. I deal with the county attorneys, I deal with state attorneys, and I deal with the on a federal level also, because of Houston being a main hub for all types of trafficking. We have human trafficking, we have weapon trafficking, we have drugs also. Being so proximity to the border, as here in Phoenix, you know what I'm talking about. So we deal with a lot of freedom of information and also through with a lot of memorandums of agreement. And then my other duty, also the general crime duties, which is I go to scenes and give the synopsis of what happened, do press releases, and then try to bring out more of a good side of what we have going on in the office, not just the doom and gloom every day, but the regular run-of-the-mill for employees that happen. Our media relations manager is Christina Garza. Her main job is to coordinate with the news agencies. If we have a press release, if we have a news conference, if we're going to do something live from an event, she will coordinate with them, and we will find out where, who, and how, and what area to get that through. Our media relations assistant is my assistant. She coordinates everything where I need to be and where I need to go. She does a yeoman's job. She's one person, and she really doesn't get a lot of credit the more that she does. We also do in our town, I don't know in other cities up there, we do mugshot releases, we do video surveillance releases. So imagine in a city of 4 million people, we might get 50 to 60 mugshots of suspects per day. Some cities don't release them, we do. It's our judgment. In Texas, you have the right, you can accept to do the rule, but we tend, as a courtesy to the news media, release suspects' pictures. Our community services is another individual, Ryan Sullivan. What he does is coordinates with the sheriff through community outreaches. He also does sheriff's talking points on different matters that we have. Again, the sheriff isn't high in demand. We do a lot of traveling. We go to Washington a lot. Because of Houston being where it is, we tend to sit in and they ask the sheriff to testify on a lot of committees in Washington. It's mainly dealing with immigration, human trafficking, sex trafficking again. You know the digital content specialist, digital media manager, of course, is Parisa. And our public affairs director is a guy named Alan Bernstein. And some departments don't have this. We're kind of fortunate to have a public affairs. And what Alan's job is he is a legislative tool between Austin and Houston, and also through Washington. So anytime we have legislation, anytime House bills or orders that come up that directly relate to law enforcement, he will go to Austin and lobby on our behalf and other law enforcement agencies. It's something that's kind of new to law enforcement, is us actually lobbying directly to our elected officials. But we've managed to get through some pretty good bills in our area. We've managed to get a organized crime and gaming task that was pushed through last year, and that was approved and came into law in September, which gives us the right to monitor and regulate gaming rooms, which is, I don't know in your areas in Houston, they're very large, and they attract a lot of criminal element. So it gave us the powers to shut these people down. Took a lot of lobbying, but we were able to get that through.
Okay, so I promised we do put out funny content. So this was my idea. I kept asking for the building inspection people I had ants and I had roaches and nobody would take me serious. And I contest that it's because I'm a civilian and I didn't have a badge and gun to intimidate folks. So I found this dead roach and I thought, what better way to speak to the police other than through a crime scene? So I and Nahida and myself had a little bit of our cop humor, as us civilians tend to do. And we put our own little, what is that, body tape y'all put around bodies? I don't know. And then we put our little crime tape around it. And I left it there. And I put a note saying, urgent, please come to crime scene. We need to have this handled before media gets here. So it was really funny. And I think I left it was like left in our office for like half a day. And then, conveniently it was swept up and everything was fine. And I got, my office got sprayed and we've had no problem since. So that's our little bit of humor. We put it on our Facebook page and it got like, okay, reviews. So, but anyway, that's kind of our cop humor. Sorry about that. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today, it made headlines, not only locally, nationally, internationally, I mean, all over internationally. We had outlets from India, France, Germany, everywhere. When something like this occurs, it's not just something that's going to stay in your backyard. So if you saw it in the news, it was considered the Texas family killings. I have a link. Let me see if it'll work. 1 second. Oh, God. Well, I don't know if y'all can see it. Maybe. Can you see it? Okay.
7 and shooting them each in the head.
Investigators say Ron Haskell was searching for his ex-wife when he came to her sister's home in spring. When her relatives didn't give him answers, he allegedly opened fire, killing 6 of them.
Tonight, we know Haskell's violent rampage began months ago and spanned 3 states.
Our Kevin Reese is live with a story of a family's terror. Kevin?
As Ron Haskell is being held here in jail tonight, he's being described by people involved in this case as a psychopath, a cold-blooded killer, a monster. Whatever the correct label tonight, we do know he's a man with a violent history.
This unthinkable tragedy began in Logan, Utah, a Mormon community where neighbors help each other build their homes. But Ron Haskell, his wife, and their 4 children never lived in theirs. The marriage crumbled before the house was done.
She had told some of us that were here in the neighborhood that she had left him because he had been physically abusive to her for a number of years.
Police in Utah say the same and more.
She alleged that he had drugged her by her hair out of their bedroom and assaulted her, hitting her in the head, and then did it again later in the evening.
There were restraining orders. Police say Haskell ignored them. He was jailed. He kept coming back. The divorce was final this past Valentine's Day. Then police say he went to Texas literally hunting for his ex-wife.
He's a monster. This tragic incident resolved from that.
The attorney for Haskell's ex-wife confirmed she had gone to her sister's home in spring, hoping to escape from the ex-husband. Now in hiding, she's distraught and reeling from the price paid in Wednesday's cold-blooded attack.
She paid the ultimate price for her freedom. I think the ultimate price was it wasn't her life. It was her family's life. That psychopath came after her, couldn't find her, took out her family. I can only imagine the deep pain that she's going through. Nobody should have to go through that.
And tonight we've also learned that Haskell's own sister and his own mother sought restraining orders against him too in San Marcos, a suburb of San Diego, California, as recently as just 7 days ago. His mom said he was upset that she had talked to his ex-wife, so he duct taped his mom to a chair, placed his hands around her neck, choked her until she passed out, and told her that he was going to kill her, her family, and any officer who stopped him.
I would dare say we're going to learn a lot about him, his behavior, his mental status. I think a lot more will come out.
And one more telling comment from the attorney you heard from in that story. He said they were all concerned. They were worried about Ron Haskell, but no one.
Okay. So, I'll let Gil get into this. And I'll tell you why we showed you the video, because essentially, like the title of it says, we
start with those new details about the California man accused of tying up a family of 7 and
thank you. The news media, they're always trying to butt in. This again, it not only was just us and the precinct constable deputies that we initially had worked with, but when you look at the full scope, especially from a PI perspective, and you're trying to piece everything together, not only for, you know, your colleagues in investigations, but for the media, right? There was so many moving parts. There was Utah, there was California, there was the whole trip down to Texas. What was he doing in Texas? And so Gil right now is just going to give you a brief, you know, snapshot of kind of play by play to kind of show you kind of the chaos from when the call dropped until when we finally got the suspect into our custody.
Okay, so on July 9th, 2014, Ron Haskell approached the house at a residence on Turning Leaf in Spring, Texas, which is just a small enclave inside Harris County. He was dressed as a FedEx worker and had a package that he was trying to deliver. Now, this residence was his ex-sister-in-law, her husband, and their 6 children. 5 children or 6 children? 6 children.
5.
5 children, I'm sorry. He approached the house and knocked on the door and was asking to deliver a package to Katie Stay, who was the mother. Cassidy Stay, who was the 15-year-old at home with her younger siblings, answered the door, and he approached her and told her that he had a package and he needed to leave it for her, for her mother. She told him that, and at this point, she did not recognize that it was her uncle. Ron Haskell was her uncle, and as you can see, we'll show you later, he had gained a lot of weight, he had grew his hair out, and had a very big, bushy beard that you could see there when he was on. And she didn't recognize him at first, so she told him to come back. He left, and after maybe a few minutes, 15 to 20 minutes when we estimate, he did come back to the house. Again, knocked on the door, and again, she answered and told her that the mother had not returned yet. And at this time, he pulled a pistol from out underneath his shirt and forced his way into the home. Again, she was at home with her 4 siblings that range in age from 4 years old to 13 years old. He forced them all into the living room area, waiting for Katie and Stephen, his sister-in-law and brother-in-law, to return from home. About 30 minutes into it, they did return home. And meanwhile, this whole time, he kept asking the children where his ex-wife was. Now, mind you, he had been divorced for a year now. As you can see, the pattern of violence that was left from him. He was a very abusive husband. A lot of protective orders had been brought out. And she had fled Logan, Utah to Houston in an area that was not too far away from her own sister. When they did return, Stephen and Katie, he forced them into the living room also. And again, he demanded to know where his ex-wife and his 4 children were hiding. We now, talking to Cassidy through, and it's been a long time since then, through our forensics with the children counseling, they didn't tell Ronald where he was, which made him even more enraged. And he made them all lay down on the floor. He tied their hands behind their back, and he methodically shot each one in the head until he got to the last, which was Cassidy. Again, he asked her, and she told him that she didn't know where family was, and he shot her one time in the head and fled. He leaves the house. He'd come in a white pickup truck that we had found just down the street from the homicide residence. Actually, that night, about 2 in the morning, myself and a lieutenant from homicide were going back to the first scene, and there was a bend in the road when you come around into the neighborhood, and we had turned, and we had parked there because of the vehicles from crime scene and adjoining agencies that had gone. And we saw the truck and didn't think anything about it, thought it was a neighbor's truck. Later to find out it was his own vehicle. Now, he had fled the house and got into Katie and Stephen's silver Toyota, which you'd seen there in the fleeing in the newsreel. And he had driven over to the grandparents' house, which was the Cassidy and her family and the mother and father-in-law. His ex-mother and father-in-law was driving over there to kill them. After a few minutes, Cassidy managed to call 911. The bullet had entered behind her ear here and had exited just in front of her ear here, next to her jawline. And she survived, and she managed to call 911. Our dispatcher were talking to her. This area in this neighborhood is patrolled by Harris County Precinct 4 constables, which I don't know in y'all's area if y'all have constables. They're another entity of, in Texas, they started as process servers and now have moved into more of a law enforcement deal. They do a lot of patrol and smaller, in Harris County, we tend to inherit a lot of their cases, murders, robberies, that sort of stuff, because our agency is much bigger. But the initial patrol officer arrived. He had told dispatch, she had told dispatch that all her family was dead and that her uncle had killed them. And again, he had fled the house in their vehicle, driving over to the grandparents' house, because that way, when they saw the car, they looked out the window or saw the car, they wouldn't know it was him. They just used the vehicle and not be any alarm to him. She did manage to tell dispatch that where he was going. At that point, we put out a bolo on the car, and we also sent some units to try to get to Anvil, which is a little more than 2 miles away from where the original scene was. In between that time, he had driven around and had not gone directly to the grandparents' home. We don't know where he was at that time, but we ended up, as he pulled into the neighborhood, there were some Precinct 4 cars in front of the home, and there was also some county vehicles that were pulling into. At that point, he stopped, backed up onto the main road, and then took off. And at that, the sheriff's office vehicles attempted a traffic stop on him, and the pursuit was on through there. We lasted about 3 to 5 miles, back and forth, up and down through Ella and some other major interfares. And then he went into another residential neighborhood area, fleeing from deputies, came around, and then, as you saw on there in that area, the street that he had turned on, his front tire had blown out, and he didn't manage to stop at the house that he was trying to. Unbeknownst to us is where that was that was Katie's brother's house. So again, he was trying to kill people even at the last minute. His ex-brother-in-law, sister-in-law, and their 4 children. So she had, by not being killed by this person, this monster, she literally saved, 6 to 8 more people's lives had people been home. But again, this was another aspect. So at that point, he came down into the median area of the street on Country Meadow, and he had anywhere. We had about 22 to 29 units of all these different areas of law enforcement. We had Precinct 4 and sheriff's constables chasing him. We had our helicopter was up, and then also Department of Public Safety. And then the main thing is when we got him, as you can see in the news thing, when he was caught in the cul-de-sac, our main aspect at that point was keeping him contained. We already knew he was violent. He had already killed 6. Was making sure that people in and around that area were safe at that point. They evacuated everyone. So now going back to the first homicide scene, I got word of it on my way home, maybe 20, 25 minutes after the call had come in. And the first responders there, the precincts, also you have news media that were showing up that heard it over their scanners, so you already had a live truck show up, maybe 35, 40 minutes into it. And again, what we talk about here is having one voice. We had a law enforcement agency, who was the constables, giving a soundbite at the very beginning and not confirming anything. We didn't know how many dead we had. We didn't know if any were wounded. We didn't know if any were still in the house. We hadn't cleared the house yet. Deputies had not gone in. They hadn't cleared the house. So it was a very fluid, and it was a very chaotic scene. When I arrived, my first duty is when they called, is we activated our high incident command post, and also our homicide unit. We activated 2 units. We had 8 investigators because of the amount of bodies. And for witnesses, we needed that many just to coordinate statements and to interview anyone. Plus, we had to have 2 go to the hospital to try to interview Cassidy, who was going into surgery. At that point, he had already, one of their representatives had already told the media that some of the family members were dead, some of them were not. The one surviving member was a 35-year-old female, which later turned out, as you know, I was only a 15-year-old. So trying to stem the rumors, trying to confirm things and back on one track, to have one voice was very hard at first. But once we got on site, once I arrived, I came in and briefed the media and told them that nothing else would be coming out until the Harris County Sheriff's Office released it. So we would be, no one else except our releases would be what was confirmed, and anything else that was released from any other law enforcement agencies would be disregarded. Because you have, unlike other areas, we have constables in the Sheriff's Office, we all run off the same calls for service system, which means anyone can get in and click over and look at calls for service in that area. So if a constable can look in and see calls for service for the Sheriff's Office and vice versa. So it's not uncommon for us to show up on scene and have media already there, as someone from an adjoining agency has already briefed the media and told them what's going on before I even get there. So it's something that we deal with on a daily basis.
And let me just, so at this point, Gil's arrived. He's called back once he's gotten all of his information from the on-scene supervisor. He's called back to the media relations office. And if you can imagine, we're all like, oh, there's 4 screens in our office and we're just, watching every news outlet. At this point, we're getting, our phones, our cell phones, our emails are just out of control, as soon as media gets word. And imagine, how many news outlets did you say dedicated? 10? 10. So that's just local. And then you get, the AP and all these people, the Texas Tribune, and then it starts spreading statewide. Next thing you know, CNN, Today Show, Good Morning America, everybody's, right? This is a big story. So when Gil is in the field, usually what happens in the media relations office, it's kind of like, oh, you know what? And it's all hands on deck. So in my office, we are standing by waiting for any feedback from Gil and or the media relations manager. We essentially support everything that he's feeding back to us because we are the official voice. And fortunately, a lot of partnering agencies do also have Twitter and Facebook, but if we are on scene and that is our investigation, we are the sole voice that needs to go out. So this is just an example. As soon as Gil called back and said, you're clear to, send out that tweet, that Facebook post, then it started. So usually this is what happened. Breaking, we put something out because as soon as, this was also in the evening time.
Right.
So folks are getting home, they're turning on their news. Probably a lot of folks are getting back home to these 2 different neighborhoods now that are, they have police everywhere, there's helicopters in the air. They're gonna be concerned. And so part is messaging to the public and accurate messaging. The second part is keeping the fear of the public at ease, right? You want to keep calm. You don't want people, flying out of their front doors, running up and down the streets, especially when you're not aware of what exactly is going on. And then there's a chase, that's occurring, and there's possible other, homes that this guy's trying to get into. So there was a lot of moving parts, and I just wanted to touch base right in there just before Gil keeps going, because from social media, this is what we're doing at this point.
So when we had 2 active scenes going on, the Country Meadow is where we ended up at for him in the chase, and then Turning Leaf was where the actual homicide was. So I wasn't worried about the homicide scene. Homicide investigators are an autonomous group. They have their own press releases when they do, but in a critical incident as this, we still have the one voice, which is myself. So the sergeant and the lieutenant who are over homicide, they would not release anything else until we coordinated together. Our biggest thing was on the Country Meadow scene was getting the amount of live trucks coming in, and photographers and stringers and everyone else that were showing up, and getting them and coordinating them in one area. And trying not to choke off an entire neighborhood where people are still trying to come home in the middle, at 6:30 in the evening and 7 o'clock. We had shut down major thoroughfares and neighborhoods in, and we had to evacuate the homes that were in and around him after he stopped. So that alone was a process of moving people down, out, and then away from the scene. Again, we didn't know if he would turn violent again or not, and that was our major aspect. So our HROU, our High Risk Operations Unit, was activated. They consist of 12 operators and a hostage negotiation team. They came out. Those were the big bears, the 2 bears that we have that you saw. They were coordinated out from the port where we have our operations center. And then trying to get everybody on track. Again, the genie had already been let out of the bottle already, and then trying to find out the actual true facts of how many that I had deceased, how many were alive, and getting that back on track until the end, and when we could put out one release. Because everything then was all I was trying to do was confirm this, confirm that, and can you confirm? And you know, the neighbors tell us 3 bodies were taken out alive and not 2. So, and this is, and again, when you're at a scene, it can be, and you know, it can be a little annoying because you're trying to do your job and you're trying to answer your phone, and you have reporters yelling at you, and you have people trying to say, you know, neighbors said there was 3 brought out, not 2. So you have to tell them that, you know, I can't confirm anything until I release what we're going to release. So, and again, that's the major point that we're talking about is one voice. And we have an example later on that's not exactly the best. But negotiations took about 4.5 hours. Our hostage negotiation team managed to get close enough to talk with him and give him a phone. After a while, he became very quiet. Then he'd go back belligerent, and then he'd be quiet again. And then finally, at one point, he threw the pistol out and stepped out of the vehicle, and we took him into custody. Altogether, that was about 5 hours. The total crime scene was around 12 hours from start to finish. And it was a very long day for investigators, for patrolmen, for the media relations, because we're still having, now you have people from halfway around the globe who are, their normal business day is starting, they're wanting information. So again, we're having to pump out things. Our Nixle people are fantastic. We love Nixle, they're our friends. We learned them from LA County, and that was one of the best things we've ever done, was our Nixles. We were putting them out like clockwork. Every time we had something new, we'd put out.
Yeah, probably every half hour. And that was honestly, that's in that situation, we're supporting Gil, because he's on scene with all these media that are, I mean, flooding. And then back home, right, the phones are just out of control. So we're pumping out Nixle to all the media outlets that have subscribed, right, to get our breaking news alerts. So we're trying to keep them at bay from the home office and support Gil and our other folks that are in the field to kind of, you know, at least do that part, hopefully alleviating just the constant questions and crossing the tape, if you will.
Yeah, and not trying to regurgitate the same stuff that had already been put out. I guess the next door is what we wish we would have used.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. If I could say what we should have done, we had just launched Nextdoor. Shout out Nextdoor. What's up? We love Nextdoor. We love Nextdoor. Harris County loves Nextdoor. Probably more than we should. It drives me crazy. But so we had just launched Nextdoor, and if I could go back, and if you're familiar with Nextdoor, there's a feature in there called an urgent alert. And what's great about Nextdoor is you can zone and narrow down all the way to one individual little neighborhood if you want. So the thing about Nixle is that we love it, and you can send urgent messages, but that's a subscriber, sort of like Nextdoor, but there's not that many people subscribed yet. It's still more of our media partners. So that's that channel for that route. But for our residents, Nextdoor is like blown up. Every neighborhood about in Harris County has launched it and is doing great. I think we have something like, I don't know, don't tell me if I'm wrong back there, but something like 800 neighborhoods, and they're huge neighborhoods. What we should have done in this situation was sent an urgent alert to the 2 neighborhoods that were affected. And this is great because they can receive it either by text or by email, depending on their settings. We should have sent an urgent alert saying, either stay inside, you know, this is the situation, or if their neighborhood or their street needed to be evacuated, we could have guided them digitally because we had so many users in those neighborhoods. But that's kind of like, you know, after action, you know, when your boss is like, what could we have done better? And he looks right at you, you know, you're like, oh, that's me. That's what we could have done better. And since then we have. So flooding, missing persons, anything, that is the first place, that's the first channel we go through. If you're ever interested, or if you're new to Nextdoor, I'd be happy to show you some things that we do. But the residents love it. They only appreciate it. But, you know, the day after, it's such a heavy, sad topic in our community. You know, an entire family practically was wiped out by some deranged lunatic. And, you know, it's like for social media, you want that softness, right? You want that human piece, but you also want to be that police presence in their community, letting them know that you're safe, we're doing our job, right? You have these 2 kind of conflicting voices. So we were kind of hands tied, and we just put together photos that the Houston Chronicle, the one paper in Houston, if you can believe it, they put a really beautiful photo essay together. So we just kind of did a shout out to our HROU, our SWAT team, if you will, because they were next to Gil. They were out there for a really long time coaxing this gentleman from not only harming himself, but from our other officers. It was a really difficult and hot July day
Yeah, it was hot.
in Texas. And we got a decent amount of likes. There's no thousands. It's nothing that went viral per se, but it reached some people, and it kind of went to bed after that. And I think people really just appreciate it in the community, and that was kind of it. If Gil will talk about this, but this is a shot from one of the helicopters, the news media, just to give you an idea of the mayhem. That's his car, obviously at the end. This is before, right, Gil? Before the HRU
Yeah,
came
before
out?
HRU came in.
And where'd they come from? Behind? Right,
Yeah,
or something?
Country Meadow going south there. But
Yeah, so
our main topic also was, I didn't tell you, was, I mean, on the one voice type thing, at the sheriff's office, we have memorandums of agreement and memorandums of understanding with all the local law enforcement agencies. Again, we have 68 different law enforcement agencies in Harris County, which can be, when you arrive on scene, you have to figure out whose jurisdiction and whose or what, as you know, what side of the toy line do we play on. But these were the best things that we've done in a long time for this. Hospital districts, school districts, we have, active shooters. Anytime that we have school incidents, we had a spring school stabbing where 4 suspects murdered a 14-year-old inside the school. So we had to take over. Our homicide took over that scene and HROU because the 4 suspects fled in the school. So we had an active suspect in that. Again, when we arrive, we take over, and we take over everything. So, and that disseminating information also. And sometimes this works good, sometimes it doesn't. With the school district, it was a little difficult because they did not want to put out anything to alarm parents. Yet you have, in a school of 4,000 people, it was literally 4,000 kids at Spring High School. You have probably 1,500 to 2,000 parents outside. Once they heard that someone had been killed, you can imagine the fright of parents trying to get to the school. And that just made for a whole different line. And the one thing we tried, and they waited almost 2 hours to put out something. We tried to explain to them that you need to put something out now to assure parents that their children are okay. But that was more a political thing. Again, when you play in such a big city, you have to make sure you don't step on people's toes. But we have hospital districts, school districts, and a variety of municipalities that we deal with.
So just because we're short on time, so just to show you kind of the aftermath, this is a screenshot of hcsonews.com. We have a really great forward-thinking sheriff. We're honored to work for him. He kind of lets us experiment a lot with digital stuff. So we thought, well, whom better to provide the news than the Media Relations Office? So we're just one step ahead sometimes in the Media Relations Office with the news. So we put out all of our official messaging here, and we direct all of the news channels to this website so they can pull it directly from us because it's been vetted. Legal's taken a look at it. It's combed through. There are no mistakes, although sometimes there are, but that's Nahita's fault. Just kidding. So all of this comes here. We have a ticker. It's just really, really been great. It was very inexpensive to produce. The news media loves it. The public loves it. And so it's just kind of our news hub that we get to produce ourselves. And we're very proud of it because it's kind of led everybody in that same voice like we've been talking about. And this is just after the fact. I mean, their whole community was just devastated, if you can imagine. This was a very active family in their church. They were lovely volunteers, really great people. And then there was children involved. And nobody ever wants to go to a crime scene, where not just one, but multiple children have been murdered. And it was just a very tragic.
It actually helped us open up a line of communications with the LDS Church, with the Latter-day Saints in the Mormon community. We've gotten very close ties. We do a lot of initiatives with them now. They're a very big community in the Houston area. So out of a tragedy, we did manage to get something good out of it. And besides putting this guy, he goes on trial next month, actually, in Harris County. So
yeah, as soon as he had his arraignment, we were there, Nita and I and Gil, we went right back to our office and put this out because it was such an outrage to the public, who could get away with such a thing. So we just, again, it's just communicating the message, giving our officers a pat on the back for doing such a great job because they got him alive and they brought him back so, justice could be served to that family. We already, let me see. That's it, huh? Well, I had a screenshot of something else. But yeah, so we're short on time. I have other war stories I can help you go with if you have any questions about Twitter, Facebook, Nextdoor. We also are in the midst of, controversy, if you will, with our social media policy. If you haven't written one yet, or if you're going through it, I'd love to talk to you about that. My hands are still red from all the slaps I've gotten. So, if that's something that your agency is going through, please feel free to pull me aside and we can share suggestions, ideas, because I think we put ours out a year after I wrote it. It was finally approved, and then 6 days later, we were served with the lawsuit. So that's a whole other presentation. But anyway, thank you so much. And if you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you.
Thank you, Parisa. Thank you, Thomas. Appreciate it.